Last year,
It's happened!
they went and took it.
He struck him out looking!
This year,
The Texas Rangers win the World Series!
they're here to run it back.
It's over!
This is Bleav in Texas Rangers, hosted by Mitch Ferreldis.
We've made it to All-Star break. Welcome into this episode of Bleav in Texas Rangers. Be sure if you like what you're listening to, you rate 5 stars, you subscribe, you tell your friends about Bleav in Texas Rangers. It's where you can get your bite-sized Texas Rangers content a couple of times throughout the week, throughout the season, where you can catch up on everything happening with your reigning World Series champs. So, as I mentioned and as I teased, we are at the All-Star break, and I do apologize for the prolonged absence the last week and a half or so. I'd been, dealing with some travel and then some health issues immediately after said travel. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to churn out the episodes as quickly and as frequently as I would have hoped. So to make up for it, just to give you an idea of what the schedule to come is, you're hearing this episode now, which is after the first round of the draft. I wanted to wait until the Rangers made their pick at 30 before taping. The second round is still going on now, but we're not gonna hang around for that. Maybe we'll check on it later. So this episode now, there will be an episode after the All-Star game on Tuesday to recap basically the entire weekend. So how the home run derby went for Adolis Garcia, how the game went for the 3 members of the Rangers attending. More on that in a second. And then there will be one more episode that I'm hoping to push on Thursday to preview the return series, because then after that I travel again, taking a quick vacation, and then the next episode is not going to be until Monday. So hopefully the amount of episodes this week will tide everybody over until then. But there's a lot to get to, so let's not waste any more time. Rangers are at the break. As things stand right now, record-wise, 46-50, so a far cry from where they were a year ago, halfway through the season. They are third placed in the American League West. They are 5 back of the lead Seattle Mariners. They're 7.5 games back of a wild card spot as well. The Astros are ahead of them in the division. They did pick up the 2 wins against the Astros this weekend, which is huge. They finished their last 10, 7-3, the Rangers did, and within that was a sweep of the Rays at home. Like, there was a lot of good play happening for the Rangers in this last week plus of the season, or of the first half of the season, excuse me. As far as statistics go, I just picked out a few team statistics that are based it league-wide and based it whole league-wide. So whole league-wide and then American league-wide. Could mean something, could mean nothing. As far as batting statistics go, they currently rank 20th in Major League Baseball in OPS. That's 8th in the American League. They're tied for 17th in home runs. That's 9th in the American League. 17th in runs scored. That's 8th in the American League. And then 22nd in stolen bases. That's 11th in the American League. As far as pitching is concerned, 15th in ERA. They're 8th in the American League. 15th in walks plus hits per inning pitched. That's 9th in the American League. They're tied for 5th for average against in major leagues. That's 3rd in the American League. So really impressive work there in that regard. 20th in strikeouts, 11th in the American League. They're 6th in walks, and that's categorized by most walks surrendered this season. That's 4th most in the American League. And then 12th most home runs allowed this season. That's 7th in the American League. So we'll do the statistical approach reaction, and then we'll do the just like my gut feelings about the state of the Rangers now that we're at the break. Based on the statistics, it's not necessarily a team that gives me a lot of confidence going into the second half. I know there's a bunch of caveats that we will touch on later, but if I'm just looking at the statistics, and I know I only cherry picked a few, they're very middle of the pack, which is to say that they're not a team that leads me to believe that they're going to be competing in October. They, of course, very well could. We've seen teams go on even crazier runs to make it all the way through the postseason and to the postseason. But right now, this is not a team that strikes any sort of fear in me if I'm looking at just the statistical breakdown. I'm very surprised that they have the 5th best average against as a pitching staff this year, because given that they have been middle of the road in all the other areas, leads me to believe that there's some like bad luck involved. And then you look at walks, and the fact that they've allowed the 6th most walks this season, and you wonder, yeah, that would probably be a thing. Because remember, there was that month where they just allowed walks every single day. I think it was throughout May or throughout June, where it was like every single game there was a walk. And it's you cannot give up those free base runners. It's just it'll kill you before it'll give you a chance. So statistically, nothing really that leads me to believe that, wow, this is one of the best teams in the league. I mean, they've still got a run differential that's teetering around the middle mark right now. It's hard to give myself a lot of confidence and hope about this team given how they've done statistically. But as we've come to know, statistics do not tell the whole story. Statistics are just one quantifier of how well a team is doing, but the Rangers are not going to be quantified just by their statistics. There's a lot of other things that go into it. I mean, they're working with a positive run differential right now. Those games against the Rays and the Astros have certainly helped. So they're working with a +9 run differential right now at the break. But the Astros have skyrocketed ahead in run differential. The Mariners also have a positive run differential. So teams are starting to level out, and it's not like it was earlier where all the teams in the American League West had a negative run differential. Teams have started to settle in, find their groove, so to speak. Now, eliminating the statistics and just doing it as based off of what I've seen this year and based off of what I've known this year, I mean, the biggest thing is the fact that they've had an entire pitching staff injured for most of this season, right? Like, we just got Max Scherzer back. He just had his 4th or 5th start of the season today against the Astros. They've still spent the whole season without Jacob deGrom, without Tyler Mahle. Cody Bradford had 3 starts, and then he's been injured and out for most of the year. Dane Dunning is working his way back from an injury on a rehab assignment right now. John Gray has been on and off the injured list throughout this season. It's been a lot for this pitching staff to take on. And it hasn't just been the staff, like the bullpen with Brock Burke punching the wall and breaking his hand, with Josh Spores going on the IL on 2 separate trips. Like, it's been every part of the pitching staff that has been absolutely decimated by injuries. As far as the offense is concerned, the biggest loss so far this year has been Josh Young, who was on a tear to start the season and then gets hurt in the 3rd series or 2nd series of the season and has not been back since. And they are just now revamping up his baseball activity right now. Like, he was on a rehab assignment. They had to stop his rehab assignment, stop his baseball activity altogether, and then just recently revamped the baseball activity. And then he's eventually going to go on another rehab assignment. It's been a long time. Now, the positive of that is we've gotten to see Josh Smith absolutely flourish in this full-time role that he's basically adopted. He had 2 home runs today. He provided all the Rangers offense today. Very easily could have had a strong case to make it as an all-star reserve. I'm curious how he would have gotten there. If I'm being honest, third base is a pretty steep position this year. And there are some very deserving candidates that are in and were candidates for the all-star game. Josh Smith was certainly one of them. Don't get me wrong. But he continues to have his breakout season, and hopefully it gets rewarded sooner rather than later, even when Josh Young comes back, because I think they've now found a mainstay for the lineup that they didn't really have or didn't think that they had going into the start of this season. You think, too, with Evan Carter on the shelf and Wyatt Langford is now presumed a primary spot, relatively speaking, in left field. He's flipping time between that and DH, but when Josh Young comes back and when Evan Carter comes back, I have to imagine that Wyatt Langford is going to find most of his time as the left fielder and not the designated hitter, because pretty soon this team's just going to need to find guys that can hit the ball. And I know Leody Taveras had a really rough stretch there for a second. He's been really down offensively this year. I know he's a key piece of the order, but if Evan Carter comes back, you put Wyatt in left, Evan in center, Adolis in right, and you're not going to put Josh Smith's bat on the bench, and maybe Josh Young starts as your DH to begin play when he comes back, just so they don't rush him back out there defensively. There's a chance that, like, some guy who was a key part of the Rangers run last year will not be a key part of the lineup down the stretch. And this team, 4 games under 500, needs everything that they can get down the stretch in order to get back to contention and defend their title. I think, too, that this is very much a far cry from the team that we saw last year. Last year, it was just an offensive juggernaut, and we hadn't even seen Evan Carter at this point in the season, right? Like, Jonah Heim was having a breakout year. Corey Seager was playing at an MVP level. Marcus Semien was playing at an MVP level. Adolis Garcia was hitting home run balls left and right and driving in runs like there was no tomorrow. Josh Young was breaking out as a rookie. And at the same time, they got a good chunk of games out of Jacob deGrom as a starter before he went on the shelf for the rest of the year. And this was even before they got Max Scherzer. This was before they got Jordan Montgomery. Like, the Rangers staff was able to hold serve and make it all the way to this point, playing as well as they did last year. This is a far cry from last year's team. That has me concerned a lot. The fact that they look nothing like the team that they did last year. Now, there's some aspects that are similar, but Corey Seager's start to the year was not very promising. Marcus Semien has taken a dip in production heading into All-Star break. I mean, a lot of these guys could really use the break right now, and some of them aren't going to get that break. Like, Adolis is going to be playing in the home run derby. I can't imagine it's going to take a lot out of him, but, he could use a break right now. He had it rough in a stadium that he has very much owned in previous games. He really struggled in the Astros series. Corey Seager, it would be nice to get him a break. He's just been added to the All-Star team. He's not going to get that break. Marcus Semien is now starting the All-Star game. He's not going to get the break either. But the rest of the staff, thank goodness that they get a break, because it's just been a long and taxing season so far to this point. So hopefully things turn around in the second half. It'll be curious to see how they approach the trade deadline in the second half. And that takes us to our next topic. So last week, Bob Nightingale released his latest notebook. And what Bob Nightingale likes to do is he just likes to tell you what he's hearing. He works for USA Today. He's their lead baseball writer. He's part of the Baseball Writers Association of America. He's very well respected in what he does. Personal favorite of mine, too. Bob had reports that very much circulated saying that he was hearing that rival execs were prepared for the Rangers to become sellers for guys like Max Scherzer, Michael Lorenzen, David Robertson, and Kirby Yates. And all those make sense. Reason being that Max Scherzer's on the final year of his deal. Michael Lorenzen is on a 1-year contract and was a trade deadline candidate last year. David Robertson and Kirby Yates are both on veterans deals as well. So they're not going to be around here next year unless they are re-signed. But all of them have had either sparkling reputations or they've had really good seasons. And if the Rangers continue to fall, I wouldn't be surprised if they sell either. I don't know how much, but I do know for a fact one person that's not going to be sold is Max Scherzer. He went on with a show called Foul Territory, which is with Scott Braun and AJ Pierzynski. He went on as a guest and was asked about waiving his no-trade clause, which is exactly what he did in order to go from the Mets to the Rangers last year. And Scherzer basically straight up said, no, I'm not going to waive my no-trade clause, and continued to back the team and say that I think that we're going to turn things around and we're going to get things going here. He says that, and considering where they are now, having won 7 of their last 10, it feels like they're backing up what Max Scherzer was saying. And at the same time, it feels like Max Scherzer maybe brought on a little bit of confidence to the team by going out and publicly saying, no, I'm not waiving my no-trade clause so I can get moved at the deadline. Like, it sounds like this is a guy that wants to be here to run it back and keep running it back, right? This is a guy that really is committed to the success of this team and not just his own individual success. I get it. Players maybe they'll change their mind in a couple of weeks. Maybe they just say what they say publicly to save face. I'm not accusing Scherzer of such. I'm saying that Max Scherzer said he's not going to waive his no-trade clause, and I believe that. I just wonder, where will this team be 2 weeks from now? Are they still going to be below 500 and several games out of a wild card spot and feel like they can comfortably flip players to try and get some um, minor league capital back, restock the farm system a little bit? Because this is what happens when you become a really good team. You start trading away your farm system, and all of a sudden you're really top heavy and your lower levels are really struggling. Not to say that the lower levels are struggling for the Rangers. I mean, they have, once again, first half champs in Double A Frisco. So I don't think anything is going wrong there, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do at the deadline, but it sounds like Max Scherzer doesn't want to go, or at least has made it clear right now he doesn't plan to be going anywhere. If I were the Rangers, I would highly consider my options when it comes to Kirby Yates and David Robertson, just because teams will overpay for back-end bullpen help this time of year. I think of the Dodgers as a team that really likes to aggressively try and add to back-end bullpen, and they've had a couple of blown saves the last few days. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Tigers, for Pete's sake. So there's a chance that they could get aggressive. I know the Orioles, as a team that is very competitive in a very competitive division, they could be searching. The Yankees could be searching and looking for a reunion with the former Yankee Kirby Yates. There are teams out there that will overpay and aggressively pay for back-end bullpen help. And if you're in a position where you're several games under 500, a back-end bullpen arm is not going to help you get all the way there, right? Like, you could say the same thing about David Robertson. Like, David Robertson fits in the same category as Kirby Yates. Those are two guys that could be traded to a team that needs back-end bullpen help and will overpay to get it, even though these guys are on one-year deals and expiring contracts. I'd consider them. Michael Lorenzen, you could consider as well, because the purpose that he was brought in for seems, I don't want to say lost, but now it feels like the Rangers, if anything, have a surplus of pitching, considering eventually Cody Bradford is going to come back. Jacob deGrom is going to make his season debut. And then you've got Nathan Eovaldi, Dane Dunning working his way back, John Gray. You've got Andrew Heaney, who's had some really good starts as of late. And then, of course, Max Scherzer, who's already made it clear he doesn't want to go anywhere. I could see the Rangers entertaining the idea of moving Lorenzen and then the two closers that was mentioned in Nightingale's report. Will they do it? I have no idea. Maybe they see themselves as actual competitor, or not competitors, not actual competitors. That's the wrong phrase. Maybe they see themselves in a position to strike, I guess would be the best way I'd phrase it. Again, they won 7 of their last 10 games. If they carry that momentum with them through the All-Star break into the start of the second half of the season, there's a chance that this team is above 500 going into the trade deadline. And crazier too, there are teams that were below 500 that have made trades, bought, and then won the World Series, Atlanta Braves in 2021. It's possible. Any route is possible for this team. But what I think they will end up doing is they might do like a buy-sell sort of thing, where they won't give away any major assets, but they might give away a couple expiring contracts for the sake of replenishing the farm system. And I know nobody wants to hear that. This was the team that just won the World Series, for crying out loud. Nobody wants to hear about the reigning World Series champs going into sell mode at the deadline. But sometimes you do have to consider your options and consider that maybe next year is going to be better for you. I don't know. And I know a lot of people are going to hate me for even suggesting that. Okay. Speaking of All-Star Weekend, we are here. Of course, the All-Star Game is in Arlington. It's in Globe Life Field. So they had the Futures game yesterday. That was Sebastian Walcott got an opportunity for the American League squad, and then the pitcher as well, whose name escapes me at the moment. So a couple of Rangers representatives at the Futures game on Saturday. Of course, there was also the softball game, which is always fun with the celebrities. The Home Run Derby will feature Adolis Garcia. He's the only Ranger in the field. He's got some pretty stiff competition, though. Pete Alonso's in the Derby. Gunnar Henderson is in the Derby. A lot of strong power hitters, and I imagine there's going to be a lot of long balls in what has very much been a favorable hitter's park. I'm curious how it's going to play. First time in this stadium, so should be very entertaining. Should be a good time. This stadium is no stranger to big events, though. Of course, they hosted the World Series last year, hosted the World Series in 2020, where there was a lot less people in it. But this should be a good time. This should be awesome revenue-wise for the DFW, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Home Run Derby produces. And there's a chance that Adolis could actually win the whole thing. I like the hometown favoritism, and I like the hometown crowd behind him. It should be really good. As far as the All-Star game, that's going to be Tuesday. Things we know heading in regarding the Rangers. So Jose Altuve won the starting job out of the fan vote. Marcus Semien was then added as a reserve. That was announced a couple of weeks ago. And then yesterday or 2 days ago, he was announced as the starter at second base. Jose Altuve is going to take the All-Star break off. Good riddance. We don't need him. So Marcus is going to start, and then Willie Castro has been named a replacement for Altuve. So Semien's going to start, and then Castro will be behind him. He's from the Minnesota Twins. Kirby Yates has made the All-Star team as one of the relievers. He joins Clay Holmes, Andres Munoz, who's replacing his teammate Logan Gilbert, Emmanuel Clase, and then Mason Miller as well. Man, that's a really good bullpen for the American League. I'm curious to see who they go to and when Kirby gets this opportunity. Of course, Boch is going to be managing, so Boch is bringing his whole staff. So we'll get to see Tony Beasley at third base. We'll get to see Mike Maddox as the pitching coach. Like, it's really cool that this team just won the World Series, and now they get to host the All-Star game where all the best players get to mingle for a couple of days in the DFW in your hometown. And then, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the news that was just announced, Corey Seager has been named as an All-Star game replacement. He replaces Carlos Correa, who is dealing with some plantar fasciitis. And Seager, the local guy, or the hometown guy, he will get to play in the All-Star game. He'll play behind, who's the starting short? Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt Jr. So it's a steep shortstop position. I imagine Seager is going to get some opportunities, given that Boch is the manager. So there's a chance that Seager gets a single at bat and maybe a rep at short, or maybe he'll come in as a DH replacement. I don't know. But really talented pool of shortstops. It was going to be tough for Seager to crack the reserves regardless. And, you know, there's the rule about every team has to have one representative. That's not to say Carlos Correa didn't deserve to go. He's had a really solid season. He's had the numbers to prove it. But Corey Seager has also had a really solid season. Nothing like he had last year when he was the starter, but enough that he deserved to attend if given the opportunity. So I'm glad that he's been given the opportunity. And then the last thing that we're going to touch on here, the MLB draft. I waited until the first round had concluded so that I could tell you who the Rangers selected. And they drafted Malcolm Moore, who is a catcher out of Stanford. And I know a lot of Rangers fans have been clamoring for a catcher to be the pick for the Rangers because the catching depth, it's Jonah Heim. They have Andrew Kisner here. And I'm not saying that this guy's going to be on the roster next year. Who knows? Wyatt Langford was on the roster after a brief stint in the minors. But then, you have Sam Huff in the minors, but then beyond that, it's kind of thin as far as catcher's concerned. So what do you need to know about Malcolm Moore? He played 2 seasons at Stanford. He transferred after a season at Bellingham College, which is in Washington. Or Bellingham, rather, is Bellingham is a woodbat team that plays during the summer in the West Coast League. I actually broadcasted games a long time ago in the West Coast League for the then Highline Bears. So after that summer, he played 2 seasons at Stanford. So he was an early draftee. He's rated among the top prospects in this year's class via Fangraphs and MLB Pipeline, as well as Baseball America. During his 2024 season, which was this past year as a sophomore, he slugged .553 and had a .414 on-base percentage. Had a team-high 44 walks, third most in the Pac-12. He had 16 home runs, which were tied for sixth most in the Pac-12. Rest in peace, Pac-12. He was also on the Pac-12 All-Tournament team after he went 4 for 10 with 3 homers, a double, 4 RBIs over 3 conference tournament games. Courtesy to the Texas Rangers media team for tweeting out those stats. Now, I will say he played more games in his freshman season where he had 15 homers and 63 batted in. In less games, he hit more home runs, but he had fewer runs driven in. But, at the same time, the primary need is a backstop. He has played some first base, but primary need for the Rangers is to get themselves a catcher. And I was talking with my brother who really loves Stanford baseball, and he says that they've got a good guy who's got a lot of pop and power hitting catcher. By all means, Pudge Rodriguez. Yeah. Mike Napoli. Yeah. At times, Jonah Heim. Yeah, absolutely. Bring on another power hitting catcher. Let's go. I'm all for it. So that's going to do it for this episode of Bleav in Texas Rangers. More draft picks coming for the Rangers. There's several rounds to go. They're wrapping up round 2 today. And then tomorrow it'll be rounds 3 through 10. And then the other 10 rounds on Tuesday before the game. Then you got the red carpet show on Tuesday after the home run derby on Monday. And then the game is Tuesday night. And then we will reconvene Tuesday night after the game is done to recap everything that members of the Rangers did. It'll probably be a really quick podcast unless some major news breaks. That'll probably only be a 15-minute pod, just reacting to how things went in the derby, how things went in the All-Star game. And then the next episode will be, all right, we're back from break. Here's what you need to know injury-wise, and then here's what you need to know about the upcoming opponent. So that's going to do it for now. So until the next episode, Bleav in Texas Rangers.